Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus looked up to heaven and said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, so that the Son may glorify you, since you have given him authority over all people, to give eternal life to all whom you have given him. And this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. I glorified you on earth by finishing the work that you gave me to do. So now, Father, glorify me in your own presence with the glory that I had in your presence before the world existed. I have made your name known to those whom you gave me from the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they know that everything you have given me is from you. For the words that you gave me to me, I have given to them, and they have received them, and know in truth that I came from you, and they have believed that you sent me. I am asking on their behalf. I'm not asking on behalf of the world, but on behalf of those whom you gave me, because they are yours. All mine are yours, and yours are mine. And I have been glorified in them. And now I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, protect them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one as we are one. The Gospel of the Lord. Well, John 17, our verses 1 through 11, but John 17 stands as the climactic conclusion of the farewell discourse, which runs from John 13 through John 17. It was delivered in the upper room on the evening before or the evening of Jesus' arrest. Historically and literally, or I should say literarily, the chapter functions as the solemn transition between Jesus' private instruction to the disciples and then to the passion narrative that begins in chapter 18, verse 1. The ancient farewell speeches commonly included a prayer or a blessing, like think about Deuteronomy chapters 32 and 33. And John 17 conforms closely to this pattern. Most contemporary scholars see John 17 as originally Johannine. I mean, it's not a later liturgical invention that was inserted there. No, this was part of the original document. The vocabulary that we see there, that John uses, especially the Greek, and the theology are tightly interwoven with themes that are developed earlier in the gospel, especially in John chapters 1, chapter 5, chapter 12, and then 13 through 16. John 17 is usually divided into three movements. There's the first 5 verses, John's praying for him. I mean, Jesus is praying for himself. The next, Jesus prays for his disciples. And then the last, Jesus prays for future believers. Of course, to John's audience, he's writing to them again in the last century, I mean, the last decade of the first century. He's talking to them too. They are the future believers that Jesus was praying for, but then so are we. Verses 1 through 11 bridge the first and second sections, moving from this Christological self-reference to the ecclesial church concern. That transition, these 11 verses, highlights John's conviction that Jesus' glorification and the disciples' mission are inseparably linked. Be a nice study to look at what John, how he sees glorification taking place, and Paul, what he sees as that, especially when you consider that Paul was the one who was writing first, some 30 years or more before John's time. Well, let's look at I kind of want to look at verse by verse. In the first 5 verses, we're talking about glory and the hour and eternal life. In verse 1, it says, Jesus spoke these things, and lifting up his eyes to heaven, he said, Father, the hour has come, pardon me, glorify your Son, so that the Son may glorify you. That gesture of he lifted his eyes to heaven, it kind of brings to mind the temple-oriented prayer posture, which was especially associated, and John means to do this, I'm convinced, associated with the priest's intercessory offering on behalf of the people. Think about Sirach chapter 50 and 1 Kings chapter 8. And the narrator signals that what follows is not casual prayer, but it's ritually charged mediation. It's spoken publicly for the apostles to overhear it. That's great in and of itself. And that's kind of the direction I want to go, is looking at Jesus offering this priestly prayer. He wants the disciples to hear him interceding for them. Continuing in verse 1, the hour has come. That declaration, Father, the hour has come, draws together a dominant theme or motif that we find in John. Throughout the whole gospel, Jesus' hour had not yet come. Think about chapter 2, verse 4, chapter 7, verse 30, 8, verse 20. Now, at the threshold of the passion, the long anticipated moment arrives. Historically, critically, this signifies not just Jesus' impending death, but the total complex of cross, resurrection, and exaltation. And the declaration, the hour has come, gathers the entire Johannine passion theology. The Greek phrase, lexically, the Greek word ora, well, is the ordinary Greek term for hour. But in John, it functions as kind of a historical marker. It encompasses the crucifixion and the resurrection and the exaltation, all as a single divine act. From the perspective of Judaism, the Second Temple Judaism, again, that's from the years 300 BCE until 200 of the Common Era, AD. This climactic hour corresponds to the decisive moment when God acts to vindicate God's people. That's language that's common in apocalyptic prayer and festival expectation. In the last part of verse 1, and then into verse 2, Jesus asked to be glorified so that the Son may glorify you. For John, doxa, glory, doesn't indicate just honor, especially apart from suffering. Rather, glory is paradoxically revealed through the cross. In priestly terms, Jesus does not seek glory apart from God, but assumes the role of a faithful mediator whose obedience publicly reveals the Father's holiness on the eve of sacrifice. Talks about authority over all flesh, and that invokes ideas from Daniel and from the wisdom traditions, but it's reinterpreted this time Christologically. Jesus experiences royal authority by granting life, not by coercive rule like the Romans are doing. No, he's granting them abundant, eternal life. Then he defines it in verse 3. Verse 3 offers the gospel's most explicit definition of eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. Wow, that word, the Greek word to know, it's invoking images that are relational, it's covenantal knowledge. It's not abstract cognition, understanding. Oh, I know that guy. No, this is it's a powerful word, especially in Hebrew and Aramaic. That when you think about in Hosea chapter 6, verse 3, for example, it's reflecting Jewish biblical understanding, not Greek intellectualism. So eternal life is present. It's this present participatory communion with God, not just post-mortem existence. No, here, now, part of the plan. Crucially, eternal life is defined by the Greek phrase, that they may know. That verb reflects the Hebrew verb yada, which is, again, this relational, covenantal knowing. And it's a powerful word that's used in the Hebrew scriptures. One of my favorite uses of it is in Exodus. It's talking about the children of Israel are in bondage in Egypt. They were enslaved. And it said that God looked down on the people, and most of our translations say, and God understood the plight of his people. It's not what it says. It's very simple. It simply says, and God knew. God looked down upon his people Israel, and God knew. Powerful stuff. Jesus then presents himself, not the law or the temple alone, as the very location where this covenantal knowledge is now accessed. It's in the person of Jesus that we can know God and God knows us. Verses 4 and 5 talk about a completed work in this glory that was there from the beginning. It's kind of striking. Jesus speaks of having finished the work even before the crucifixion has occurred, at least in narrative time here. Sometimes scholars will refer to this as a proleptic or a theological perfect sense, meaning the certainty of completion rather than chronological sequence. You know what's going to happen, and so it's declared to already happen. A great song by my favorite band has the line that the promise will come when the promise is made. This is what we're talking about. That already the mission was fulfilled, the knowledge was there, even before the action had gotten there. In priestly terms, again, remember we're talking about Jesus praying like a priest. This mirrors the way that sacrificial acts were verbally completed before the final ritual moment. Just as a priest might declare readiness before entering into the holiest place, Jesus also declares the work complete as he approaches the climactic act of offering himself. Verse 5 reaches back to pre-creation, declaring that the Son's pre-existent participation in divine glory. That's a central pillar of John's high Christology. And now, Father, glorify me in your own presence with the glory that I had with you before the world existed. Wowee. That verse reaches beyond any kind of functional glory back into pre-existence, affirming that Jesus had shared the divine glory. And in the Jewish tradition, this pre-existent glory belongs uniquely to God. Think about Isaiah chapter 42, verse 8. So John articulates this, again, this high Christology, while he's still maintaining a continuity with the priestly functions. The eternal Son now returns through obedient self-sacrifice to the glory that he had previously possessed, had eternally possessed. That's why in theological terms, we talk about the emptying of Christ's self, setting aside the glory that he's talking about here, setting aside the divine attributes, declaring ignorance. I don't know, only the Father knows. And now ready to pick it all up again. He moves on in verses 6 through 11, the last half of the passage. Talks about revelation and belonging and protection. Talks about the revelation of the Father in verses 6 through 8. Jesus claims they have manifested the Father's name. Again, remember, we talked about the Father's name, that it's the character, the authority, acting on behalf of. In biblical theology, God's name signifies his character, his presence, his authority. And that echoes the famous Exodus traditions, where God reveals his name to establish the covenant relationship. Giving of one's name was a sign of trust, a sign of relationship. I mean, how many times you watch the movies and hey, what's your name? Well, what's your name? They believed that to give someone your name was to give that person some kind of authority or hold on you. And yet we read the Exodus account and God openly gives God's name. The disciples, their faith is described positively then. They have received the word. They have recognized Jesus' divine mission and believed in his sending. To manifest his name is explicitly priestly language. In the Hebrew Bible, the divine name dwells in the sanctuary, according to Deuteronomy 12. The divine name is protected and invoked by the priests. And Jesus claims to have disclosed, not just spoken, the name, indicating this revelatory access to God's presence apart from the physical temple. Remember, Jesus is moving them from temple theology, and certainly John is making this case, moving them from this concentration on the temple as being the presence of God to we are the presence of God. They were yours, and you gave them to me. That language of gift and receiving and belonging, that really underscores the divine initiative. This was something that was started by God. In the writings, the psychological and philosophical and theological writings of a guy named Carl Jung, he had a terrific book on the myth of the divine child, and he talks about how important it is that we have these like the virgin birth. We're not going to debate it whether or not it was a biological thing, because the symbolism is that we had nothing to do with it. This was God's action. From a historical critical angle, this reflects the early Christian reflection on election and community identity, likely shaped by John's own community's experience of being marginalized and expelled from synagogue life. And that contrasts with cosmos, the world. That contrast, the world, it's not spatial, but it's those who are theologically and ethically uninvolved. The phrase of this world again reflects the or out of this world, reflects the covenantal transfer rather than being taken out of the world. It means being taken from the relationship that is solely based on the world to the relationship that is completely wrapped up in God. The disciples are drawn out of the world's rebellious order into a consecrated community, which is analogous to Israel itself, and Israel having been claimed from among the nations. In verse 8, for the works that you gave to me, did I say works? Words. For the words that you gave to me, I have given to them, and they have received them, and know in truth that I came from you, and they have believed that you sent me. Those words there, those three words, they received the revelation, they have acknowledged the divine origin, and they are faithful allegiance to the word. Now, importantly, belief isn't reduced to just acknowledgement or assent, but it involves recognizing Jesus as the sent one, a category that's rooted in Jewish agency law, the Salia, where the sent agent fully represents the sender. Again, that's what doing in the name of is talking about. I carry the name of God, so I carry the authority, even the character, the agency of God. Verse 9, I'm praying for them. I'm not praying for the world. Well, now that's really high priestly intercession there, especially during Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, where the priest first intercedes for Israel before addressing the nations. John isn't denying God's love for the world, for crying out loud. Think about John 3:16. No. He's not but he's highlighting this covenantal priority. Those given to Jesus are now the representative community through whom God's purpose for this world will now be enacted. All mine are yours, and yours are mine. That's the shared divine prerogative, reinforcing Christ's equality with the Father. Yeah. Remarkably, Jesus states that he is already glorified in them, the disciples, anticipating their future witness. And this reveals John's ecclesiology, his doctrine of the church, in which the community participates in divine glory through faithful testimony. And that mutual possession formula exceeds just prophetic agency, and it implies a shared divine prerogative. And that final clause, yours are mine, and I am yours. And that introduces this priestly extension of glory. God's glory now rests within the covenant community. And that's going to anticipate John's doctrine of the church as believers being a living temple. And as Jesus departs, in verse 11, the disciples are going to remain in the world, and the petition, Holy Father, protect them in your name, draws on, again, this priestly imagery, this temple imagery. The temple's still there when Jesus is saying the words, but not when John writes the words. The temple has been gone for 20 years and more by the time is. So he has Jesus magnificently standing in the place of the high priest, now saying that where you are is where the temple is. And he's praying as the priest in that temple. And the aim of protection, protect them in your name, the aim of protection is unity, so that they may be one as we are one. We got to think about that a lot. I like the address, Holy Father. Does two things. Talks about this transcendence of God, holiness, and the intimacy of God, parenthood. Echoing the priestly blessing formulas that we find in Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 through 26, and the verb to keep or protect, it recalls God's covenantal guarding of Israel, now entrusted through the mediation of Jesus. Finally, this unity isn't some institutional uniformity. Oh, please don't bore me with that. It's participatory communion. It's not just Lutherans or Catholics or Baptists or Methodists or Eastern Orthodox. It's not just that. It's a communion of all of us who are participating in the divine life, modeling it on divine relationality. Sorry, that was the best word I could come up with. This relationship with God through Christ that we're all of us trying to achieve drives me crazy when people say, oh, well, this guy used to go to I don't know, the Methodist church. And now he's come and joined our church. And so we've grown the church. No, you haven't. They just switched buildings is all. Okay, switched a few doctrines maybe. Yeah. Read the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis. It's yeah. So historically, exegetically, reading the words, the meanings of them, John 17, verses 1 through 11, presents Jesus as Son, as revealer, and as the high priestly intercessor. And the passage integrates John's Christology, preexistence and glory, with John's soteriology, the doctrine of salvation, which is eternal life is knowing God. That's eternal life. And his doctrine of the church, ecclesiology, which is a protected, unified community sent into the world. The prayer isn't about anxiety, it's about a confident threshold of sacrificial self offering. The Greek vocabulary, the narrative placement, the theological claims all converge with this Second Temple priestly tradition. But it also is radically recentering these ideas on the person of Jesus. Glory, knowledge, unity, and protection are no longer mediated by the temple and by the religious apparatchiks. It's mediated by the Son who reveals the name of God and forms a sanctified people in his place. Marvelous. Thanks be to God.